Veltar looked at the message on his screen 3 times before he believed it was real. The words glowed blue against the dark metal of his desk. Assignment: Human Combat Observer. Duration: 6 months. Location: Human Vessel Indomitable. His thin fingers trembled as he touched the screen. In all his years working for the Galactic Defense Council, he had never received such an order. The Catherians were peaceful people. They built shields, not weapons. They talked through problems, not fought through them. War was something other species did while his people watched from safe distances. Veltar's supervisor, Elder Morthen, appeared on his communication device. The old Catherian's face looked tired. His gray skin had deep lines around his large black eyes. "You have questions," Morthen said. It was not a question. "Why me?" Veltar asked. "I study shield technology. I know nothing about combat." "That is exactly why we chose you," Morthen replied. "The Council needs someone who can see human warfare with fresh eyes, someone who has never killed, someone who still believes violence is always wrong." Veltar felt cold. "What am I supposed to do?" "Watch, learn, report back what you see." Morthen paused. "The humans have been fighting the Ravager swarms for 2 years now. They claim to be winning. Other species are starting to believe them. The Council wants to know how." "Surely we have battle reports." "Numbers on screens tell us nothing about the truth of war," Morthen said. "We need to understand what the humans really are when they fight, what they become." The call ended. Veltar sat alone in his small room, looking out at the peaceful gardens of the Catherian homeworld. Flowers bloomed in perfect rows. Water fountains played soft music. Everything was calm and ordered, just as it had been for thousands of years. 3 days later, Veltar stood in a transport ship heading toward human space. He had packed light clothes, recording equipment, and medical supplies. The human captain who met him at the dock was nothing like he expected. Captain Deho was shorter than most humans Veltar had seen in diplomatic meetings. His face bore several scars, including one that ran from his left temple to his jaw. His hair was black with streaks of gray. His eyes were dark brown and seemed to see everything. "Welcome aboard," Deho said in accented but clear galactic standard. "Hope you brought a strong stomach." Veltar did not understand what stomach strength had to do with observation duties. "I am prepared to document human combat techniques." Deho smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We'll see about that." The Indomitable was larger than Veltar expected, but felt cramped compared to Catherian ships. Human vessels were built for function, not comfort. Gray metal walls lined with pipes and cables. The air tasted metallic. Everything hummed with barely contained energy. Deho led him through narrow corridors to the bridge. "Meet my crew," the captain said. A woman with short black hair looked up from a tactical display. Her movements were precise and quick. "This is Hie Jin, my tactical officer," Deho said. "She plans how we hurt the enemy." Hie Jin bowed slightly. "Pleased to meet you." Her voice was calm, but her eyes studied Veltar like he was a problem to solve. At the weapons station, a young man was checking gun batteries. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. "Taemin, weapons specialist," Deho said. "He makes things explode." Taemin grinned and waved. "I prefer surgical removal of enemy assets," he said cheerfully. A woman in medical uniform approached. She looked gentle, with kind eyes and soft features. "Subin, our medic," Deho said. "She fixes what war breaks." Subin smiled warmly. "I hope you won't need my services," she told Veltar. The last crew member was elbow-deep in an engine panel. He emerged covered in grease, but smiling. "Ki-Young-Soo, Chief Engineer," Deho said. "He keeps us flying when we should be dead. Ki-Young-Soo." Wiped his hands on a rag. "Nice to have a non-human observer," he said. "Maybe you can explain to these idiots that ships have limits." The crew laughed. Veltar was confused. These humans seemed relaxed, even friendly. They joked and smiled. Where was the grim military discipline he expected? "When do we begin combat operations?" Veltar asked. "Tomorrow," Deho said. "Ravager scouts were spotted near the Kepler colonies. We're part of a joint task force heading out to investigate." That evening, Veltar sat in his assigned quarters and watched the crew through the ship's internal cameras. They gathered in a common area to eat dinner. They shared food, told stories, and laughed at each other's jokes. Hae-Jin helped Subin repair a medical scanner. Taimin and Kyung-Soo played a card game with complex rules. It looked like a family gathering, not a military unit preparing for war. Veltar tried to reconcile what he saw with what he knew about humans. His people's database contained extensive files on human history: wars, genocides, nuclear weapons, biological warfare. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times before reaching space. They were the only known species to have fought major wars on their homeworld and survived. Yet these humans seemed normal, pleasant even. Later that night, Veltar found Captain Deho in the ship's small observation deck. The human stood looking out at the stars, holding a cup of some hot drink. "Can't sleep?" Deho asked without turning around. "I am trying to understand," Veltar said. "Your crew seems very peaceful." Deho took a sip of his drink. "We are peaceful, most of the time. But you are soldiers." "We're people first, soldiers second," Deho said. "Has to be that way or we forget what we're fighting for." "What are you fighting for?" Deho turned to look at him. In the starlight, his scars seemed deeper, his eyes darker. "Same thing every species fights for when it comes down to it. The right to keep existing, the right to protect what we love. The Catherians believe violence is never the answer. That's because you've never faced a problem that wanted to eat you," Deho said quietly. "The Ravagers don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They consume everything and move on. Sometimes violence is the only answer that works." Veltar felt uncomfortable. "Surely there are other ways." Deho smiled again, that same unpleasant expression from earlier. "Maybe there are. But when the shooting starts tomorrow, we'll use the ways we know work." He finished his drink and headed for the door. "Hope you're ready to see what we're really like when the shooting starts." Veltar stood alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of the Kepler colonies. Millions of beings lived there in peace, unaware that death was moving toward them through the darkness. Tomorrow he would learn what humans became when that peace was threatened. He was not sure he wanted to know. The alarm woke Veltar from uneasy dreams. Red lights flashed in his quarters as the ship's computer announced, "Battle stations! All hands to battle stations! This is not a drill!" Veltar hurried to the bridge, his recorder clutched in his thin hands. The scene that greeted him was chaos, but organized chaos. The crew moved with quick purpose. Hyojin sat at her station, fingers dancing over tactical displays. Taemin checked weapon systems with the focus of a surgeon. Subin secured medical equipment while Kyung-soo vanished into the engine compartments. Captain Dae-ho stood in the center of it all, calm as a stone in a storm. "Report," he said. 37 Ravager ships detected at Kepler 442c, Hyojin said. "They're attacking the mining colony. Estimated population 15,000 civilians. Allied forces, 12 Catherian shield ships, 8 Zentorian dreadnoughts, and 6 human vessels, including us." Veltar did quick math in his head. 26. Ships against 37. Not good odds, but not hopeless. "Time to intercept?" Dae-ho asked. 18 minutes at current speed. Kyung-soo's voice came through the comm system. "Too long," Dae-ho said. "The colony won't last that long. Can you give me more speed?" "Captain, the engines are already past safe limits." "I didn't ask about safe. I asked if you could give me more." A pause. "Yes, sir. But if something breaks, we might not make it home. If we don't get there in time, nobody makes it home. Do it!" The ship lurched forward. Veltar felt the deck plates vibrate under his feet. Through the view screen, he watched other ships in their task force. The Catherian vessels moved in perfect formation, their silver hulls gleaming. The Zentorian dreadnoughts advanced like floating fortresses, all angles and armor plating. The human ships moved differently. They spread out, each taking a slightly different path. They looked like hunters circling prey. "Contact in 5 minutes, Hyojin announced. Veltar activated his recorder and focused on the tactical display. The Ravager ships were dark blots against the planet's surface. They moved in swarms, covering the colony like insects. "All ships, this is Admiral Karthek on the Zentorian flagship," came a voice over communications. "Standard engagement protocol. Catherian ships will provide defensive screens. Zentorian ships will engage from maximum range. Human ships will provide close support." Captain Dae-ho picked up his communication device. "Negative, Admiral. Human ships are going in first." "Captain Dae-ho, that is not the agreed plan." "Plans change," Dae-ho said. "Ravagers are fast. By the time your big guns get in range, they'll have stripped that colony bare. We're faster, we're meaner, and we're going in now. I cannot authorize this deviation." Dae-ho looked at his crew. Veltar saw something pass between them, some silent communication. "You don't need to authorize it, Admiral. We're not asking permission." He cut the communication. "All human ships, this is Dae-ho. Break formation. Attack pattern Delta. Hunt and kill." The human ship suddenly accelerated away from the main fleet. Veltar watched in fascination and growing alarm as they spread out like predators approaching. A herd. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, Taemin announced. His voice had changed. The cheerful young man from yesterday was gone. In his place sat someone cold and focused. "Target the big ones first," Hyojin said. "Make them hurt." "With pleasure," Taemin replied. The first shots lit up space. Plasma bolts and missile trails streaked toward the Ravager swarm. The alien ships responded quickly, turning to face this new threat. Veltar had seen fleet battles in simulations. They were usually careful affairs, with ships trading shots at long range while maneuvering for advantage. This was nothing like that. The human ships dove into the enemy formation like sharks into a school of fish. They fired at point-blank range, took hits that should have crippled them, and kept fighting. When one human ship's main guns failed, it rammed a Ravager vessel and kept firing with secondary weapons. "Captain, Kyung-soo's voice crackled over the comm. "Hull breach on deck 7. We're venting atmosphere. Can you seal it?" "Working on it. But we've got Ravager boarding pods incoming." Veltar felt ice in his stomach. Boarding actions were the stuff of nightmares. Hand-to-hand combat in the corridors of a spaceship, where every breach could mean death for everyone aboard. Captain Daeho drew a weapon from his belt. It was a ugly, brutal-looking thing designed for close combat. "Subin, Hyejin, you're with me. Taemin, keep shooting. Kyung-soo, seal what you can and fall back to engineering." "What about our observer?" Hyejin asked, nodding toward Veltar. Daeho looked at him. "Stay on the bridge. Don't touch anything. Don't get in the way. And whatever you see on those security monitors, remember that we didn't start this." The 3 humans left the bridge at a run. Veltar was alone with Taemin, who continued firing the ship's weapons with mechanical precision. "Aren't you afraid?" Veltar asked. Taemin glanced at him briefly. "Terrified," he said. "But that's not important right now." Veltar activated the internal security cameras. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Ravagers had cut through the hull in 3 places. They poured into the ship like a black tide. The aliens were nightmarish creatures, all teeth and claws and hunger. They moved fast and killed everything in their path. The humans met them in the corridors. Captain Daeho fought like something out of ancient mythology. He moved with deadly grace, his weapon cutting down enemies faster than Veltar could count. But it wasn't his skill that shocked the Catherian observer. It was his expression. Daeho's face showed no emotion at all. He killed with the same calm, focus. He used to give orders. Hyejin was different. She fought with scientific precision, calculating angles and distances, finding weak points in enemy armor. She turned combat into a mathematical equation where the answer was always death. Subin was the most disturbing of all. The gentle medic had become something else entirely. She moved through the ship like a ghost, appearing behind isolated Ravagers and killing them silently. When she found wounded enemies, she finished them off with clinical efficiency. Other crew members joined the fight. Engineers used tools as weapons. Maintenance staff set traps in the corridors. Everyone fought and everyone killed. But what truly frightened Veltar was how they coordinated. They moved like a pack, covering each other without orders, anticipating each other's actions. They had become a single organism with one purpose: to destroy the enemy. The battle lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, every Ravager boarder was dead. The humans had taken casualties, but they had won. Captain Daeho returned to the bridge. His uniform was torn and blood-stained. His weapon was still in his hand. For a moment, he looked at Veltar, with the same cold expression he had worn while killing. Then, slowly, humanity returned to his eyes. "Status report," he said, his voice hoarse. "Enemy fleet is retreating," Taemin replied. "Colony is secure. Allied casualties are light." "Our casualties? 3 dead, 7 wounded. Could have been worse." Daeho nodded and holstered his weapon. Around him, the bridge crew returned to their stations. The deadly efficiency remained, but the killing machine quality faded. "Good work, everyone," Daeho said. "Subin, see to the wounded. Kyung-soo, I need damage reports. Hyejin, coordinate with the other ships for search and rescue." They went back to being people. But Veltar had seen what lay underneath. Later, as medical teams from other ships helped treat the wounded, Veltar found himself in the ship's morgue. 3 human bodies lay under white sheets. They had died protecting strangers on a world most of them had never seen. Su-bin was there, cleaning blood from her hands. "Does it get easier?" Veltar asked. She looked at him with sad eyes. "I hope not," she said. "The day killing becomes easy is the day we stop being human. But you were so efficient, so deadly." "We had to be," Su-bin said simply. "They would have killed everyone on that colony. Sometimes being human means becoming something terrible to protect something precious." Veltar looked at the covered bodies. "Was it worth it?" "Ask the 15,000 people who are still alive down there," Su-bin said. "Ask their children who will grow up because we were here today." She left him alone with the dead. Veltar stood in the morgue for a long time, trying to understand what he had witnessed. The humans had not just fought. They had become predators, efficient killers, death incarnate. And when it was over, they had gone back to being people who cared about the wounded and mourned their dead. He was beginning to understand why the galaxy was starting to fear them. Orbital Station Gamma 7 hung in space like a metal flower, its arms reaching out toward the stars. The Indomitable docked there for repairs after the battle at Kepler 442c. Veltar walked through the station's corridors, still trying to process what he had seen. The station was neutral territory, hosting beings from dozens of species. Catherian diplomats in flowing robes talked quietly with Zentaurian trade representatives. Merchants from the Outer Rim haggled over cargo manifests. Everything was peaceful and civilized. Veltar found it hard to believe that just 3 days ago, he had watched humans turn into killing machines. He sat in the station's central plaza, a vast space with artificial trees and flowing water. His recorder lay on the table before him, waiting for his report. But how could he explain what he had seen? How could he make his peaceful people understand? "Mind if I join you?" Veltar looked up to see Hye-jin standing beside his table. The human tactical officer wore civilian clothes now, but her eyes still held that calculating quality. "Of course," Veltar said. Hye-jin sat down and ordered tea from a service robot. "You look troubled." "I am trying to understand what I witnessed," Veltar said carefully. "The battle? The transformation. One moment your crew were people. The next, they were something else entirely." Hye-jin was quiet for a long moment. "What do you know about human history?" "Some. Wars, mostly. Your species seems to excel at violence." "We excel at survival," Hye-jin corrected. "Violence is just one of the tools we use." She activated a small display device and showed him images. "This is where humans come from," she said. "Earth, beautiful. World, but dangerous. Everything there evolved to kill or be killed." The images showed predators with massive teeth, poisonous creatures, natural disasters that could wipe out entire regions. "Humans weren't the strongest or fastest," Hye-jin continued. "We survived by being smarter, by working together, by being willing to do whatever it took." More images flowed past. Humans hunting in packs, tribes warring over territory, cities burning. "We fought each other for millions of years," Hye-jin said. "We learned every way there is to kill, every way to win, every way to survive when everything else wants you dead." "But you achieved peace eventually," Veltar said. "You reached the stars." "We learned to control ourselves," Hye-jin said. "We built laws, morals, ethics. We created civilization to keep the beast in chains." She paused. "But the beast is still there. It never went away." "Is that what I saw?" The beast? You saw humans being human, Jin said. When something threatens what we protect, the chains come off. We become what we need to be. Veltar felt cold. How do you live with that? How do you go back to being normal people after practice? Jin said simply. Lots of practice. And good friends to remind us who we really are. Later that day, Veltar found Taemin in the station's armory, examining human weapons with the same care other beings might show to art. The young man looked up as Veltar approached. Want to see something interesting? Taemin asked cheerfully. Before Veltar could answer, Taemin activated a holographic display. It showed various weapons, from primitive clubs to advanced energy cannons. Human weapons development, Taemin explained. 20,000 years of innovation. Every single advance came from someone trying to kill someone else more effectively. The display showed spears, swords, crossbows, guns, missiles, orbital bombardment platforms. See the pattern? Taemin asked. We don't just make weapons. We make weapons designed to counter other weapons, then weapons to counter those weapons. It never stops. This is supposed to be interesting? Veltar asked. Look at this, Taemin said, highlighting a section. Psychological warfare weapons. Weapons designed not just to kill, but to terrorize. To break the enemy's will to fight. Veltar saw devices that could broadcast fear directly into enemy brains, weapons that caused hallucinations, tools that turned enemy forces against each other. Why would you need such things? Because sometimes killing the enemy isn't enough, Taemin said. Sometimes you need to make sure nobody else wants to fight you ever again. That's horrible. That's effective, Taemin corrected. And effectiveness is what keeps you alive when the universe wants you dead. He showed Veltar more weapons. Area denial devices that could make entire planets uninhabitable. Nanobots that could disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. Computer viruses that could turn enemy AI against its creators. Every problem is a nail when you're a hammer, Taemin said with a grin. And we're really, really good hammers. That evening, Veltar visited the station's data archives. He had full access to human historical records through his observer status. What he found there made the weapons display look like children's toys. Holocaust, 6 million humans killed by other humans in systematic genocide. The World Wars, where entire continents burned. Nuclear weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. Biological warfare that turned the human body against itself. But worse than the weapons were the stories. Humans who flew planes into enemy ships, sacrificing themselves to save others. Soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to protect their comrades. Civilians who chose death before surrender. This wasn't just aggression. This was a species that had learned to embrace destruction, even self-destruction, to achieve their goals. Veltar read about the siege of Leningrad, where humans ate leather and wallpaper paste rather than surrender. About kamikaze pilots who flew their planes into enemy ships with smiles on their faces. About the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where doomed humans fought tanks with pistols and bottles. The pattern was always the same. When pushed to the edge, humans didn't break. They became more dangerous. Fascinating reading? Veltar spun around to find Captain Dae-ho standing behind him. The human looked tired, older than he had on the ship. I'm trying to understand, Veltar said. Understanding humans is a full-time job, Dae-ho said, sitting down beside him. We don't even understand ourselves half the time. Your species nearly destroyed itself multiple times. Nearly. But we didn't. Deho pointed at the historical records. Every time we came to the edge, we stepped back. Every time we invented something that could end us, we found a way to control it. That's the real human talent. Not just for violence, but for restraint. But you still carry all that capacity for destruction. Of course we do. It's part of who we are. Deho was quiet for a moment. Your people are lucky, Veltar. You evolved on a peaceful world. You never had to learn to be monsters. But we did. And once you learn something like that, you can't unlearn it. How do you live with it? By making. Sure, we only use it on things that deserve it, Deho said. The Ravagers want to eat the galaxy. Every man, woman, and child on every world. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They're exactly the kind of threat we learned to fight. On Earth. He stood up, preparing to leave. You asked Hyajin how we go back to being normal people. Want to know the real answer? Veltar nodded. We never stopped being normal people, Deho said. We just learned that sometimes normal people have to do terrible things to protect what they love. The trick is remembering what you're fighting. For not what you're fighting against. What if you forget? Deho's expression grew dark. Then we become the monsters we're pretending to be. And the galaxy has enough monsters already. He left Veltar alone with the historical records. The Catherian observer sat there for hours, reading about human wars, human weapons, human sacrifice. Every page showed him something new to fear. But the most frightening thing wasn't the capacity for violence. It was the restraint, the choice to hold back, the decision to be civilized despite having every tool needed to be savage. Humans weren't just dangerous because they could become monsters. They were dangerous because they chose when to become monsters. They had turned their own nature into a weapon they could aim and fire at will. And right now that weapon was pointed at the Ravager swarms threatening the galaxy. Veltar began to understand why his superiors had sent him here. The question wasn't whether humans could help win the war. The question was what would happen after they won. What did you do with allies who could become anything they needed to be, including your worst nightmare? He looked at his recorder, still waiting for his report. How could he explain this to his peaceful people? How could he make them understand that their new allies were the most dangerous species in the galaxy? And how could he make them understand that this might be exactly what they needed? The alarm that woke Veltar this time was different. Instead of the standard battle alert, it was a long, continuous wail that seemed to reach into his bones and squeeze. He had never heard this sound before, but somehow he knew what it meant. This was the sound of the end of everything. He ran to the bridge of the Indomitable, his thin legs carrying him faster than he thought possible. The scene that greeted him was chaos, but not the organized chaos of preparation. This was the chaos of desperation. "Report!" Captain Deho barked as he strode onto the bridge. 10,000 Ravager ships at the Nexus Gate, Hyjin said, her calm voice cracking slightly. They broke through the outer defense line 20 minutes ago. Veltar felt his blood turn to ice. The Nexus Gate was the single point of entry to the inner colonies. If it fell, the Ravagers would have access to 50 star systems containing over 20 billion civilians. The gate was supposed to be impossible to reach. It was protected by the largest fleet in galactic history. Allied forces? Deho asked. 3,000 ships, Hyjin replied. 1,200 Zentarian, 800 Catherian, 1,000 human. Veltar did the math. 10,000 against 3,000. It wasn't just bad odds. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Time to intercept? We're already there, Captain, Tae-min said grimly. The battle started an hour ago. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Nexus Gate. It was a massive structure, larger than most moons, hanging in space like a silver ring. Through its center, Veltar could see the soft glow of the inner colonies. Around the gate, ships fought and died in numbers that hurt to comprehend. The Catherian fleet maintained perfect formations, their shields blazing as they tried to protect the gate itself. The Zentaurian dreadnoughts fired their massive guns in careful, measured volleys. Both fleets were losing. Orders from Admiral Karthek, the communications officer reported. All ships are to maintain defensive positions around the gate. Do not break formation under any circumstances. Captain Dae-ho looked at his crew. Veltar saw that look pass. Between them again, that silent communication he was beginning to recognize. Hye-jin, Dae-ho said quietly. Analysis. If we follow those orders, we lose, she said simply. The Ravagers have too many ships. They'll overwhelm us through sheer numbers. The gate falls and 20 billion people die. Time until that happens? 4 hours. Maybe 5. Dae-ho nodded slowly. Options? None that follow the rules of civilized warfare, Hye-jin said. I wasn't asking about civilized options. Hye-jin's fingers danced over her tactical display. We could use Ravager tactics against them. Ram attacks, suicide runs, kamikaze strikes. Turn our ships into weapons. Our crews into ammunition. Casualties? 70% minimum. Probably higher. The bridge was silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of weapons fire. Veltar watched Captain Dae-ho's face, seeing the weight of decision settle on his shoulders. What about the treaties? Tae-min asked quietly. The Geneva Conventions? The Galactic Rules of War? Treaties are for people who have the luxury of choice, Dae-ho said. We don't. He activated the fleet communication system. All human vessels, this is Captain Dae-ho. We are implementing Protocol 7. Repeat, Protocol 7 is now in effect. Veltar had never heard of Protocol 7. From the sudden tension on the bridge, he guessed it was something terrible. Captain, came a voice over the comm. Protocol 7 hasn't been authorized by Fleet Command. I'm authorizing it, Dae-ho said. Any ship commander who wants to follow Admiral Karthek's orders is free to do so. Everyone else prepare for unrestricted warfare. Unrestricted warfare? Veltar asked. No rules? Hye-jin explained without looking away from her displays. No limits. No mercy. We become what we need to be to win. Captain Dae-ho looked directly at Veltar. You're about to see what humans really are when we stop pretending to be civilized. You might want to look away. But Veltar couldn't look away. He watched in growing horror as the human fleet began to change. Ships broke formation and accelerated toward the enemy at maximum speed. Instead of trying to win through superior tactics or firepower, they simply rammed themselves into Ravager vessels. The pilots didn't eject. They rode their ships all the way in, turning themselves into guided missiles. Other human ships began using weapons that Veltar had never seen before. Devices that turned enemy ships' own energy against them. Nanobots that ate through enemy hulls. Computer viruses that made Ravager vessels attack each other. But it wasn't the weapons that terrified him. It was the way the humans used them. They targeted Ravager ships that contained prisoners and civilians, knowing the enemy would hesitate to return fire. They used enemy mercy as a weapon against them. They broadcast surrender signals then attacked when enemy ships approached. They violated every rule of honorable combat without hesitation, and it worked. The Ravager advance slowed as they tried to adapt to tactics that had no pattern, no logic, no honor. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, using maneuvers that should have been impossible. When a human vessel was crippled, its crew would overload the reactor and turn it into a bomb. "Captain," Subin's voice came over the comm. "Medical bay is ready for casualties." "There won't be any," Daeho said grimly. "Sir, we win this battle, or we all die trying. There's no third option." Veltar watched the tactical display as human casualties mounted. Ships vanished from the screen in flashes of light. Each flash represented hundreds of human lives snuffed out in an instant. But for every human ship that died, 3 or 4 Ravager vessels died with it. "They're adapting," Hyejin reported. "The Ravagers are starting to counter our tactics." "Then we change tactics," Daeho said. "All ships, implement Protocol 8. "Captain," Taemin said urgently. "Protocol 8 is—" "I know what it is." Daeho cut him off. Veltar didn't want to know what Protocol 8 was, but he found out anyway. Human ships began targeting Ravager vessels with biological weapons, viruses designed to kill every living thing aboard enemy ships, gas that could eat through environmental suits, nanobots that attacked nervous systems. They were using weapons banned by every civilized species in the galaxy. Weapons so horrible that even possessing them was considered a war crime. "How do you have these weapons?" Veltar whispered. "We made them," Daeho said without emotion. "Every human colony has a secret weapons program. We've been preparing for this war for decades. But the treaties assume your enemy will follow the same rules you do," Daeho said. "The Ravagers eat children alive. They don't deserve the protection of civilized law." The battle raged for hours. Veltar lost track of time as he watched humanity strip away every pretense of civilization. They used psychological warfare to drive enemy crews insane. They hijacked Ravager communication systems to broadcast images designed to cause terror. They turned enemy ships into weapons against their own fleets. But the most terrifying moment came when Captain Daeho made one final decision. "All ships," he announced, "prepare for final protocol. We're going to teach them what it means to threaten our people." Every human ship in the fleet began broadcasting the same message on all frequencies. It was in Ravager language, perfectly translated, absolutely clear. "This is what happens when you threaten our children," the message said. "Remember this. Tell your survivors, tell your leaders, tell your gods. This is what humans become when you give us no choice." The human fleet didn't just fight to win. They fought to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. When the last Ravager ship fled or died, the gate was saved. The inner colonies were safe. 20 billion civilians would live to see another day. But the cost was terrible. Of the 1,000 human ships that entered the battle, only 200 survived. 70,000 humans had died in a single engagement, and they had done it without hesitation. Captain Daeho sat in his command chair, looking older than Veltar had ever seen him. "Get me casualty reports from all ships," he said quietly. "Yes, sir. And send a message to Admiral Karthek. Tell him the gate is secure." "What about the protocols we used?" Daeho was quiet for a long moment. "Tell him we did what was necessary." Veltar looked around the bridge. The crew had returned to their normal duties, but something had changed. They moved differently now. They spoke in quieter voices. They avoided each other's eyes. They had saved 20 billion lives by becoming monsters, and they would carry that. Wait for the rest of their lives. Was it worth it? Veltar asked. Captain Deho looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. Ask me in 100 years, he said. When those 20 billion people have children and grandchildren, when the Ravagers think twice before threatening human space. Ask me then if it was worth it. But Veltar could see the answer in the captain's face. It was worth it, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. Humans would do anything to protect what they loved. Anything at all. The galaxy was safe, but at a price that would haunt everyone who witnessed it. 3 days after the battle at Nexus Gate, Veltar walked through the medical bay of Orbital Station Gamma 7. The wounded lay in rows of beds that stretched as far as he could see. Humans, Catherians, Zentaurians, and others, all mixed together, in the democracy of pain. He watched Subin move between the beds, treating everyone with the same gentle care. She changed bandages on a Zentaurian officer with the same attention she gave to human crew members. When a wounded Ravager prisoner groaned in pain, she gave him medication without hesitation. How can you do that? Veltar asked her. Subin looked up from the alien prisoner. Do what? Treat them. The enemy. After what they did. After what you had to do. Subin was quiet for a moment, her hands still working to ease the prisoner's pain. Because this is who I am when the shooting stops, she said finally. This is who we all are when we remember what we're fighting for. Veltar didn't understand. 3 days ago, he had watched this same woman hunt wounded enemies through the corridors of their ship, finishing them off with cold efficiency. Now she was saving lives with equal dedication. The war isn't over, he pointed out. No, Subin agreed. But this moment is peaceful, so I can be myself again. She moved on to the next patient. Veltar followed, still trying to make sense of what he saw. In another section of the medical bay, he found Kyung-Soo working alongside Zentaurian engineers to repair damaged ships. The human engineer shared tools and technical knowledge freely, helping to fix vessels from all the Allied fleets. The Zentaurians were ready to leave us behind, Veltar said. They called our tactics barbaric. Kyung-Soo shrugged. Maybe they were right. Doesn't change the fact that their ships need fixing and I know how to fix them. But after what happened was war, Kyung-Soo said simply. This is after war. Different rules apply. Veltar found Captain Deho in the station's Memorial Hall, standing before a wall covered with names. New additions were still being carved into the metal. Thousands of them, representing all the beings who had died at Nexus Gate. Most of the names were human. 70,000 people, Deho said without turning around. I knew some of them personally. Good people. People with families, dreams, futures. You saved 20 billion, Veltar said. Did I? Or did I just delay the inevitable? Deho turned to face him. The Ravagers are still out there. They'll adapt to our tactics, find new ways to attack, and we'll have to become monsters again to stop them. Is that what you are? Monsters? Deho considered the question seriously. Sometimes, when we have to be. The trick is knowing when to stop. How do you know? Because of them, Deho said, gesturing toward the medical bay. Because Subin still saves enemy wounded. Because Kyung-Soo still helps repair everyone's ships. Because Hee-Jin goes back to calculating supply routes instead of death tolls. Because Taemin puts away his weapons and starts telling jokes again. He paused. Because we choose to remember what we're fighting for, not what we're fighting against. And if you forget, then we become the very thing we're trying to stop, Daiho said quietly. And the galaxy would be right to fear us. Later that day, Veltar received a message from Elder Morthen. His supervisor's face appeared on the communication screen, looking more tired than before. Your reports have been illuminating, Morthen said carefully. The Council is concerned. About the human tactics? About the humans themselves? What you've described suggests they could be as dangerous to us as they are to the Ravagers. Veltar had been expecting this. What are my orders? Return home immediately. Prepare a full briefing for the Council. We need to decide how to proceed with the human alliance. And if the Council decides humans are too dangerous, Morthen's expression grew grave, then we may need to consider other options. Veltar understood. Other options meant abandoning the alliance, maybe even joining with other species to contain human expansion. The galaxy was full of precedents for preemptive action against dangerous neighbors. I need time to finish my observations, Veltar said. You've seen enough. The transport leaves in 6 hours. The communication ended. Veltar sat alone in his quarters, staring at his completed reports. Page after page of documentation showing human capacity for violence, for calculated brutality, for becoming exactly what their enemies feared most. He thought about his conversation with Captain Daiho, about Subin treating wounded enemies, about Kyungsu helping repair alien ships, about a species that could become monsters and then choose to be human again. A soft chime announced a visitor. Veltar opened the door to find Hyejin standing in the corridor. Heard you were leaving, she said. Orders from my superiors. Figured as much. Mind if I ask what you're going to tell them? Veltar hesitated. The truth. Which version of the truth? Hyejin asked. The one where we're dangerous predators who use banned weapons and ignore civilized law? Or the one where we're people trying to protect our families from an enemy that wants to eat the galaxy? Both versions are true. Yes, Hyejin agreed. They are. The question is, which one your people will choose to believe? She handed him a small data chip. This contains something that didn't make it into your official reports. Personal messages from the human crews to their families. Letters they wrote before the battle thinking they might not survive. Why are you giving me this? Because those letters show who we really are when we think nobody's watching. What we care about. What we're willing to die for. She paused. Your people are going to decide whether to trust us or fear us. Maybe this will help them choose wisely. She left him alone with the data chip. Veltar stared at it for a long time before inserting it into his reader. The first message was from a young pilot to his daughter on Earth. He told her about the flowers in his ship's hydroponics bay, how they reminded him of the garden they planted together. He promised to bring her seeds from alien worlds when he came home. The next was from an engineer to her wife, describing a song she heard on an alien world and promising to sing it for her. Another was from a medic to his parents, thanking them for teaching him to value all life, even enemy life. Message after message showed humans thinking about love, not war, about creating, not destroying, about the future they wanted to build, not the enemies they had to fight. These were the same. People who had used biological weapons at Nexus Gate, who had turned their ships into guided missiles, who had broadcast terror across space to break enemy morale. They were monsters when they had to be, people when they could be, and they chose which one to be. An hour before his transport departed, Veltar found himself back in the memorial hall. Captain Deho was still there, now joined by his crew. They stood in silence before the wall of names. "Captain," Veltar said. Deho turned. "Come to say goodbye?" "Come to ask a question. What will you tell your people about what happened at Nexus Gate?" "The truth," Deho said. "That we did terrible things to stop something worse. That we paid a price we'll never stop paying. That we hope we never have to do it again. And if you do have to do it again, then we will, because the alternative is worse." Veltar nodded slowly. He understood now. "What should I tell my people about humans?" Captain Deho looked at his crew, then back at Veltar. "Tell them we're your allies. Tell them we'll fight beside you against any threat to civilization. Tell them we'll pay any price to protect the innocent." He paused. "And tell them that if they ever become our enemies, they should surrender quickly. Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," Deho said quietly. "We don't want to be monsters, but we're very, very good at it when we have to be." Veltar boarded his transport with a head full of contradictions and a heart full of fear. As the ship pulled away from the station, he began composing his report to the Council. He wrote about human weapons, human tactics, human willingness to ignore every law of civilized warfare. He documented their capacity for violence that went beyond anything the galaxy had seen. But he also wrote about Subin treating enemy wounded, about Kyung-Soo helping repair alien ships, about personal messages full of love and hope and dreams of peaceful futures. He wrote about a species that could become anything they needed to be, including nightmares, but who chose to be human when they could. "Recommendation," he typed in the final section of his report. "Maintain alliance with humans at all costs. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. We need them on our side, not against us." He paused, then added one final line. "Fear is not always weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom." The transport jumped to hyperspace, carrying Veltar and his report home to the Catharian Council. Behind him, the human fleet prepared for the next battle, ready to become whatever the galaxy needed them to be. And somewhere in the depths of space, the surviving Ravagers told stories of the day they learned what real monsters looked like. Taku. Galaxy was safer now, protected by creatures that could become anything necessary to defend it. The peace was kept by those who understood war better than anyone else. It was a fragile peace, balanced on the edge of a knife, but it was peace nonetheless, bought with the blood of those willing to pay any price to preserve it. And if that peace ever broke, the galaxy would learn again why some species were born to be apex predators and why the wise feared them even when they called them friends.